Hi everyone, this video is going to be a little bit different from the usual videos because recently we passed 20,000 subscribers and I put out a message to the community asking for questions for a Q&A. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to jump into it with Javid on Discord, who asks, in the 3D industry, is it better to work in a studio under someone or is it better to work independently? And that's a good question, but it's highly subjective. Going freelance and being independent is definitely not something that everyone would enjoy. Without a good base of clients, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding any kind of stability. The payoff, however, if you're lucky enough to make it stable, is complete freedom over choosing your own times and how far you want to stretch yourself over different projects. If you're new to the CG industry, then I would say that going independent right from the beginning is probably not the best idea, because you'd be right at the very bottom of the freelance food chain. I would say find a studio and build up relationships, network, and gain as many contacts as you can. If you want to try going independent once you've got a high quality portfolio of work and a nice collection of contacts that would be interested in working with you, then you'll have a much better chance of getting somewhere. Robert on YouTube asks, how do you actually deal with creative blocks? There are days when I open up Blender and I can't get anything done. And that's a really important question, and I know that there are lots of people out there that struggle with creative blocks. This is something I could definitely do a more detailed video about in the future. The best way I've found for coming up with ideas is to constantly consume sources of inspiration that resonate with you. That means artworks, movies, music, books, video games. You should always be searching for new stimulation. But again, the key point here is that you need to find things that you get emotional stimulation from, because that will help to give you motivation. It's a difficult thing to do, but I think that learning how to sustain the excitement of having new ideas and turn it into a slower burn is a key to not letting the motivation run out. You should also be careful not to let yourself get frustrated when things don't turn out the way you imagined. It's a natural part of learning, and your results will be better over time, but it requires patience. But a trend I've also noticed while learning is that the more techniques I acquire into my skill set, the easier it is for me to come up with new ideas. And I think that's because as you experiment with new techniques, you teach yourself about potential, meaning all of the possibilities for the things you can now make with the acquired knowledge. When it comes to making things, I separate the idea of development into two different pillars, which are experimentation and mileage. Experimentation for me means trying out new things, always being on the lookout for new techniques that will speed up your workflow, whereas mileage literally just means making things. So for mileage, take the techniques you've learned from experimentation and put them to the test. Once you've made something, try making it again but better this time. Focus and refine those skills and just keep making more things. To sum it all up, to avoid creative blocks, surround yourself with sources of inspiration that emotionally resonate with you, avoid situations that will lead you to frustration, and constantly experiment with new techniques. That should hopefully excite your mind into finding new ideas to work with. Thanks for asking, Robert. By the way, I really like this piece that I found on your Instagram, so thank you for sharing. Asher Wayland on Discord asks how to become a concept artist from beginner to intermediate to master like you. Well, I'm certainly not a master, but the simple answer is keep practicing. Remember, experimentation and mileage. Nadine on Discord asks, what has been the best thing about this year so far, and what do you look forward to in the remaining 6 months? That's a good question, and that's a really tough one actually. I'd say getting partnered on YouTube was probably the best thing that happened, although the release of my Biogen add-on really surprised me because it was a sort of spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't really think there would be that many people interested in using it, but at the time of recording this video, there are over 9,000 approaching 10,000 users, with most of them coming from Gumroad. It really surpassed my expectations, and let's just say it was worth the investment of time. As for the remaining 6 months, I look forward to total world domination, but other than that, my aim is to make this into a full-time job because I'm really enjoying it. YouTube alone isn't reliable, but distributing resources and tools is really helping to get there. But because I'm distributing most of my content for free, I'm living on a diet of tips, generosity, and advertisements. But I'm so grateful for this wonderful community because none of this would be happening without you watching and enjoying the content. So I'm really excited to see how this community is going to grow in the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to make with all the upcoming resources. Thanks for asking the question. Nadine is actually a really good friend of mine and a remarkably talented artist. I highly recommend checking out her work on Instagram because it's amazing stuff. Saber on Discord asks, what was your childhood video game? Well, I spent a lot of time on the PlayStation 1 with my brother playing Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games, but things really kicked off for me with the PlayStation 2, with Mercenaries, Playground of Destruction, Destroy All Humans, and Ratchet & Clank. Number 2 was my favourite one. You also ask, what's the largest obstacle you've had to overcome in your YouTube career so far? The answer to that is anxiety and confidence, and it's an ongoing process, because whenever I showed my face on camera before, there was this massive deal and it took ages to do, and I did it because I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. But now it feels a lot easier and much more organic, so I think it's improving. Saber does a lot of excellent car modeling and rendering and likes to share their work on our Discord server. It's really nice stuff, and if you want to join our community as well, then there's a link in the description. Zach, I hope I said that right, asks, how do you think things like AI deep learning will change how we do 3D and 2D artwork for the future of the VFX/entertainment field? Oh wow, that question's probably going to need a video all by itself to do it justice. The short answer is I think it will change almost every aspect in ways that might be difficult for us to imagine right now, but that's usually the case with emerging technologies anyway. I can point people over to Andrew Price's talk at the Blender conference where he discusses how AI will change the 3D industry. If we end up doing more discussion type videos on this channel, then I will definitely do a video just for this. We will take a deep dive into the subject and I'll talk about where I think things are going to go, because it's really interesting. You should also take a look at one of Jama Jurabayo's recent Instagram posts demonstrating AI-powered 2D concept generation, where you can just tell the system where you want certain material types to be and it will generate artwork for you, because that's kind of freaky and really amazing at the same time. I listened to Jama talk about the grease pencil at the London Blender Day last month. He's a really nice and interesting guy with an incredible portfolio, so I recommend checking out his work. Jonas on Discord asks, what gives you courage on this journey? Well, a general distrust of reality, which I mask with obsessive dreams of fictitious futures. Why not? Jonas is a talented up-and-coming music artist that also likes to share their work on our community Discord server. If you like soundtracks, feel free to give his stuff a listen. Ducky3D from YouTube asks, what's your favorite film franchise and the top 3 artists that inspire you? Hi Nate, thanks for asking, I hope you're doing well. This is a tough question because I love so many things, each in their own way. I think the Marvel and Star Wars franchises might be too easy an answer. I really admire the work of Ridley Scott. I love Blade Runner and the continual theme of creation and the genesis of life throughout his work. I think Denis Villeneuve also did an amazing job with Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Dune. On top of that, Christopher Nolan has always interested me with his running theme of time perception and travel in films like Interstellar and Inception, so I have to mention them. I also have an obsession with the emissive visual style of Tron Legacy and its themes of symmetry versus asymmetry, as well as Buddhist symbolism, and I think the reason for that is because it shares a lot of themes with my work, if you've seen any of my previous stuff. I'd love to see more content from that universe as well, so I hope they don't completely give up on it. As for the artists, there are too many I admire to pick out just 3, so I'll shoot off some names. Simon Stålenhag, because I admire artists who have personal universes, and Simon's is a fascinating blend of a reality that feels close to home, and a fiction that feels both otherworldly and yet just out of our reach. If you've ever enjoyed his work, I think you might agree with that. Then there's Paul Pepera, for inspiring me with his hard surface prowess. Unfortunately, he passed away a little while back, and he was one of the co-founders of System Era who made Astroneer. There's a really interesting documentary on the NoClip YouTube channel about the development of the game and the passing of Paul, which is really quite profound, so I would definitely recommend giving that a watch. Then there's Vitaly Bolgorov, again for being an incredible hard surface artist. Then there's Alex Seneschal, because again, amazing work. Then there's Rob Turpin, who's a whiz kid with a pen. They do fantastic work and sell all kinds of prints. They also have a Patreon going for anyone that wants to take a look. On there you can get some fantastic exclusive pieces of artwork and backstory for their universe. They're also just a really nice person, so I recommend checking their stuff out. Then there's Pascal Blanche, who I featured in the last video. They have a unique kit-bashed vintage vibrant style that I really like. Then there's Ben Nicholas, who's just an all-round genuine and caring artist. On Fridays, he likes to run an art share event on Twitter, where he mass retweets primarily underrepresented artists to get them some exposure. So if you're interested in participating in that to get your artwork out there, then head over to Twitter and say hi to Ben for me. And then there's Yuri Schrader for creating really moving and memorable pieces of artwork. I would really like to get some prints of their work at some point. Thanks for asking, Ducky. Keep up all the great work with your channel. Congrats on passing 30,000, by the way. I look forward to seeing what else you can do. Anomaly Cat on Discord asks, are you more of a cat person or a dog person? And both is not valid. Well, personally I'm more of a dog person because I love their personalities, but cats are still cute. But you also asked a more serious question, which was, what is your magnum opus project when you have obtained the skills enough to create it? Well, there's lots of projects that I want to do, but there's one that I would really like to bring to life. However, it's never been done before, and I'd like it to stay that way before I get around to making it, so I can't tell you what it is just yet. But it will be mixed media, and it will be interactive. Isaac Turner on YouTube asks, I still need help with 3D modeling. Could you please give a few quick tips that will make it easier? Yes, I can. Number 1, practice making the transitions between shapes rather than the shapes themselves. You'll tend to see in design that form follows function. If you think about a gun, you could have a cylinder and a cube, but by itself those two objects don't look interesting. What you should do is try to practice how to transition between those two shapes, rather than mold them into something that looks roughly like a gun. As you experiment more and more with shape combinations, you will build up a mental library of how shapes should flow between each other. And over time, that should help you to figure out what the next step should be when modeling objects. It should also help you visualize how to break down complex objects into more identifiable segments. And number 2, sometimes working from the inside out is easier than working from the outside in. Think about spaceships and robots. Modeling the shapes from the outside can be quite difficult and frustrating, but if you focus on how things connect internally, then the shape of the outside should begin to describe itself. So sometimes the change in perspective can help you with your modeling. Those are just a couple of quick tips. I could talk more in detail about this in a future video if people are interested. Infinity Siam on YouTube asks, when other people are selling their tools, why would you give your tools and content to us for free? And the simple answer is, I care more about building a community than I do about making money. The excited feeling people get when they're given something fresh and new to play with is kind of priceless to me, and I would like to keep generating that feeling for people, but that doesn't mean that there won't be any larger paid content in the future. There are some larger projects in the pipeline that may require a price tag to develop and support, but rest assured I will still continue to make free content. But really the main reason I've been able to give so much away for free is because this lovely community has been so generous with leaving tips on the resources. Even a small amount goes a long way. Just to put it into perspective, if everyone that downloaded something for me gave just a single $1, then this would already be a full-time job for me and I'd be able to make free tools and resources indefinitely. We're not there yet, but we are getting there, and I look forward to the day when I can do this all the time without having to worry about time investments. They also asked, is there any opportunity to work or talk with you? And sure thing, the easiest way to contact me is on one of the social media channels. You also asked, how old are you? I'm 23 years old. Bunker Maker asks, how do you decide to stop adding details or refining your work? Sometimes I add details in my videos that probably less than 1% of viewers will notice. Good question. You'll need to learn when to cut it off and ask yourself if the details are really necessary. Usually I just stop when I get bored, and a trick I use to get around this is that I'm always working on more than one project at a time. So when I start getting bored of one, I just really want to move on to the next one, and that helps me just take the step over. It makes it a lot easier to give up on adding details and move on. Of course, it depends on what kind of work you're doing. For YouTube videos, especially educational ones, so long as the information is getting across to the viewer and making sense, then you don't need perfect hyper-detailed demonstrations to go along with that. You need to make a judgment of whether those extra details are really going to make a difference to the viewer, and whether that extra refinement time could be spent on making more useful content instead. That's not to say that you should avoid adding details. For artwork, it's certainly true that some of the smallest details are the most important, but it's a judgment that everyone needs to make individually based on what they want to achieve. By the way, Bunker Maker, I really like your YouTube channel, and I think your demonstrations are really good, so keep it up. Insane Scotsman asks, last year you created and played out an alternate reality game called Entropy. Are there any plans to do more work in that universe you created? Shorts, similar arcs, stories, etc.? I have no idea what you're talking about. Bezos Chan on Discord asks, how do you think the CG and art community will be affected by Blender? Well, I think the CG and art community has already been massively affected by Blender as a whole, and it's an ongoing process. One thing I have found quite interesting to watch is that I'm subscribed to the 3D Artist magazine, and over the years the number of featured artworks and breakdowns that use Blender seems to have increased. Other people I've spoken to that work in visual effects field seem to really gravitate towards Blender's extensibility for building custom tools to speed up their workflows. Unfortunately, the GPO license seems to scare some people away because they don't feel like they have proper ownership over tools they create, but there's a much larger debate going on about licensing right now which I don't really want to get involved in. It doesn't really affect me much because I give everything away for free, but overall I think Blender will have a massive effect on the CG community across all fields, so that's kind of why we're here, right? But at the same time, I have a sneaking suspicion that there are other open source alternatives being developed under the radar. Litlek on YouTube asks, what are your future plans for the channel, including plans for Biogen features? That's a nice question. For the channel, I'll keep doing tutorials and demos with free resources to give away. Of course, I will continue to make features for Biogen as well, which will likely consist of more things for the Shift A menu and more generators to accompany the MetaCloud effect. As open as Blender is, there are still limitations that prevent me from building really complex systems, so you might also see some development for the Unity engine as well, maybe even some projects that synergize the two pieces of software, although I can't really talk much about that yet. One of the longer term goals is to have a continual series of artistic shorts where I can just let my creativity flow without having to make it educational, so I've been working on software in between videos to speed up the production of that kind of content. On top of this, I've been working on some large projects that are kind of unrelated to the content on the channel so far. For those of you that know me better, most of my programming experience comes from game development, so expect to see some things along those lines in the future. Thanks for asking. By the way, I really like the mood of this planet render on your ArtStation page, so keep it up. Cotton Candy 619 says, I am wanting to get into game development. I have a basic idea for story and puzzles, but I'm having trouble on what to focus on first. Should I focus on story/world building or puzzles first? Well, that's a nice question. I think with making games, prioritize the gameplay loops first, so focus on puzzles before the story. You could always use the story elements as a kind of glue that connects the puzzles together and also gives the player a sense of progression. Izutionix on Discord asks, how do you get started with making tutorials, and secondly, putting stuff on Gumroad? Honestly, for the tutorials, just start experimenting with things that interest you, and if you come up with something you think you'd like to show off in a video, then just start making notes on what you want to say. My videos are scripted because I don't like wasting people's time, but there's nothing wrong with doing live videos either. Try to keep the quality consistent, and the thumbnails are more important than you might think. Treat your videos page like an artwork portfolio by itself, because when people see consistency and quality, they're much more likely to subscribe. As for Gumroad, again, try and keep it consistent. Some people shove everything they make on there, which I don't think is a good idea. Try and give everything a purpose. Gumroad can only show so many products on the screen at once, so you don't want any filler or low quality products getting in the way of your flagship products. Again, thumbnails are important. If you're providing resources alongside your videos like I do, then try to use the same artwork, because that'll be easier for people to identify. Thanks for asking. I really like the mix of colors on your portfolio, by the way. Well, I think that will do it for the questions, because I don't want this to drag on for too long. If I didn't answer your question, then I'm sorry, but there will likely be other opportunities in the future. Hopefully this video helped some of you and you found it interesting. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. You can also follow me on social media or join our Discord server to stay up to date. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.